Words of Wisdom is brought to you by Essentia Health and TV3 and LB Video Productions.
I'm Kenneth Ketter. I'm 87 years old. I was born in 1936. Born right behind the meat market, really. I was born that's as far as I got. I don't know how to describe it, but there's a little house. My grandson is living in that house now. It's been 4 generations lived in that house now. My grandparents come from Germany. They all homesteaded. One homesteaded on my mother's side, homesteaded over on the other side of Vergus. And my dad's said down by Alexander. And some of them boys were born when they come from Germany down in Alexander, and they end up going over back to Germany in the First World War. Then there was 7 boys in that family. Most of them lived to be 100 years old. Anyhow, then them boys, one of them, the oldest one, went to Parks Ferry and started a meat market. And then as them boys grew up, they'd go and work for him, and then they went out and started meat markets. So the whole family were in the meat business someplace around. And my dad and his brother came to Frazee in 1925 and bought a meat market, which is still there. Next year is going to be 100 years we've been there. And his brother died just a few years after he was here. And and he was alone. And he had a tough life. He never had the only time I can ever think he took a day off, we went down pheasant hunting one time. He took a day off, and we stayed 2 days down there hunting pheasants outside. And he'd have to work during the day, so then he'd have to butcher at night. And I used to always go with him out in the country, and back then we butchered him right out there in the country and then brought him in. So it was a tough life, but nobody had anything, but everybody was happy. I had 2 sisters and a brother, which are all gone now.
What were your parents like?
Real conservative. Of course, back then nobody had anything. When we were kids, there was just no money. And so they were real conservative, good parents, worked hard. Mother worked in the meat market all the time. I practically was raised down on Main Street. As soon as I could walk, I was down on Main Street. So I learned a lot of things early in life. And but there was just no money back in them days. Kids were way different back then. They were. You had to find. You didn't have any money, so you had to find something to do, and we done a lot of camping and fishing and stuff like that. That's about all. There wasn't much to do. Well, I remember right after the war, I was pretty small. If you had a dime, you could go to show and have a penny left for candy. That's how tough it was. But getting a dime wasn't very easy. Well, the first job I ever had, what we'd call a job, I got 50 cents an hour. That was catching turkeys, loading turkeys on trucks, which was hard work for a kid. And so when you go through that era, you're kind of what they call awful conservative, because money was so hard to come by that you hear what some of these kids make now, it just blows you. We were always doing something, but we weren't We did a lot of skating and sledding and swimming. And I never wore shoes I never had shoes until I started school back in the day. And but we were pretty much on our own because the parents were working, and we did get in a few problems. When I was 4 years old, my brother was older than me, so I was always tagging along with him. And when he'd get in trouble, I was in trouble, of course. But they had a big pickle fight. At the railroad. Well, there was a granary there, and they had some big tanks where farmers would pick cucumbers and bring in and sell them, and they'd put them in them tanks, and then a train would come and pick them up. And the big guys, they were having a pickle fight there one day, and of course I was there, and I was actually in the tank swimming. I was 4 years old, and someone said, "Here comes the cops," and there was a slide there, and I got on the slide, and I slid right into the cops' arms. So all the kids got fined 50 cents, and 50 cents. I went home, I hid underneath the bed all day, and because 50 cents was going to be a lot of money for me to get. That was funny. Yeah, I got an article in the paper someplace about that. When we were quite small, I suppose 10, 11, 12, 10, we used to camp out all summer down Town Lake. And stay down, we'd have our tents and stuff down there and stay down there pretty much all summer. We had a boat down there and dug holes in the ground to keep the food cold and stuff, and that was pretty much all summer we stayed down there.
And your parents, just the kids?
Yeah.
Just the kids,
Yeah.
no parents.
Yeah.
Where'd your parents?
Working.
They were working, so you
Well,
would just.
See, both my mother and dad worked in the shop, but the only trouble we'd probably sneak to town and raid the gardens a little bit and get some watermelons or something.
What was school like when you were growing up?
I wasn't a very good student. I liked to hunt and fish too much. I liked to skip school. Actually, back then, a lot of the kids brought, if they were coming in a car or something, they'd have their guns with them so they could go hunting right after school. And I could walk from here and go hunting. I could just take off my gun and just take walking and go hunting, and
Wow.
it was quite a life back then. We never got in trouble much because we didn't have cars or nothing to run around with. And
What did your school look like?
no, it was all grades, 12 grades. In fact, I think they had more students then than they have now. The district is pretty big, but there isn't a lot of students. I think they graduated I think there was about 80 in my class, which wasn't too bad for the back then. But Mother, when she went to school, they went in a sleigh with horses, and they'd heat up rocks and put on the bottom, and then they'd have buffalo robes to put over them.
What was the winters like and stuff growing up?
Yeah, some of them were terrible. One time the road was blocked here for 3 days. I was down on Pine Lake fishing, and I come back, and a guy was in the ditch on Highway 10, and I stopped, and we made it to town, and he stayed here for 3 days before his car was plowed out. We still hear from him. Oh.
So what was Frazee like back in the day?
Frazee would just come on, when I was a kid, just booming. coming out of, at one time we had a big mill here, sawmill, huge. Down in the restaurant, if you ever go down there, they got pictures of it. They brought them trees all the way from up by Itasca Park down Otter Tail River. And they had a railroad spur in here, and that lumber all went out west when everybody was building out in North Dakota and stuff. They didn't have any lumber out there. And then they finally, it didn't take them too many years, and they had trees all cut, and they moved out west with Oregon, I think. We had a hotel in town, and at one time we had, I think it was 7 gas stations in town. About 5 restaurants. It was a pretty booming town. And of course, then when the mill went, it started going down. But then we had a turkey plant here for quite a few years, and that's gone now. So Frazee kind of went downhill. There isn't too many business on Main Street anymore. The farmers would all come in on a Saturday night. That was a big night, and then the kids would all go to show, and then they just mingle around town and get together, and liquor store, and it was quite a time on Saturday nights.
Did you ever serve in the military at all?
I was in the medics. Went to boot camp down in Arkansas, and then down to in Texas at medic school, and we were going to medic school, combat medic school, which was really tough. But I was lucky. There was 17 of us got pulled out and went to psychiatric and went that, and then I went to Walter Reed for some more training, and then I went to Valley Forge. That's where I ended up. And it was good duty, but there was some pretty bad people in there. I don't know if I should tell you all these stories, but anyhow, I'll start down at Walter Reed. I was walking down the hall, and I see all this commotion, and I come up there, and there was a nurse and a doctor, a psychiatrist, and there was a little redhead woman, and she was just tearing everything up. And they tell me to put her in that room. So I tried to put her in that room, and she just beat the hell out of me. You weren't supposed to hit him or anything. And I couldn't get away from her. And they told me to keep her in there, and nobody would come and help me. And I was just getting beat up just terrible. And finally I had to hit her. And so 3 days later, I ends up Valley Forge in the criminal insane ward, where all the bad actors were. And they give me a key and told me where it was. And I walked in the door, and a guy come up to me. He says, I killed people, and I run this ward. And I don't know, I just exploded, and I hit him. And I knocked him right through the wall. So the nurse come out of the office, and she gave me the biggest hug you've ever seen. She said, I've been waiting for you forever. So me and her got along good for the next 2 years. But it was quite an experience in that ward.
Is there anything else you can share about that experience? What did you do?
Well, I just sat in there and wait for somebody to get in trouble. Wanted to. There was about 20 people in the ward. And then I didn't have to do that much. They give shock treatments to, which was a terrible experience. And the ward that I was on, they give them insulin shock. They go into comas. Well, they put them into a coma, and then they bring them out. But then during the day, a lot of them would drift back into the coma, and then you'd have to get orange juice. We'd carry about a jug of orange juice with us to get down their throat. And See, that's your treatment then. Now it's all pills. But back then it was either they put them in a coma and out again, and then or shock treatments. You didn't know what was going on.
Wow.
So I had some pretty good experiences there.
So what's your wife's name?
She was Joan Gibbons.
Okay.
Her dad was a turkey farmer out by Evergreen. Real nice people.
How did you and Joan meet?
Oh, down at, I think at a dance someplace.
And then how many kids did you have?
5.
Five boys.
5 boys.
Oh my gosh. And so how many do you have grandchildren now?
I can't even count them all. Grandkids and great-grandkids and great-great-grandkids, and they're doing all well. The meat markets, I give that to them, to my boys, and they're doing real well now. I give that to them about 25 years ago. I got 2 sons there, and a granddaughter, and a great-grandson. Pretty much family, and I've been working ever since without pay.
And it's called
Ketter's Meat Market,
okay.
And it was just a little wood deal, and it wasn't much of a place. And about 1961, I got out of the Army. My dad had sold it, and the guy only had it for 6 months, and he'd give it back. So, and then I was helping him, and then I had another job besides, and I decided to probably build another one, so I started looking for money, and of course I couldn't, bank wouldn't borrow me any money because I didn't have none, but the small business loan gave me a loan. And building the business I built was, which turned out to be real good, but a lot of hard work. I got up, well, I'll tell you how hard I worked. I borrowed that money from a small business loan, $100,000, and I paid it off in 3 years. But I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and a lot of nights I wouldn't get home till 10 o'clock at night. And that small business guy come down and he says, "What happened? How come you paid it off?" I said, "Well, I was just able to. I had some really good help, and they'd come to work when we butchered pigs. I'd get up at 3 o'clock and start the water, heating the water, and they'd come at 4 o'clock, and a lot of nights we were there at 10 o'clock yet butchering pigs. And wages wasn't much in them days either. I had a good run at it. I was lucky. I learned from my dad, and he learned they're all Germans and sausage makers, and we make just sausage. We're still making venison sausage from last deer season. We make sausage every day, just about, and we make a lot of different kinds of good sausage. We make it like you used to. I think I got the only wood smokehouse in Minnesota. The inspector's been trying to get me to get rid of that, but in no way I'm gonna. I've been fixing that. I got stainless steel floor in it now, and the stainless steel ceiling and everything. So they're leaving me alone, but we still burn wood, just wood, no electric smoke at all. And we got a good product.
What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in your lifetime with community, with the world?
For a person like me, you kind of think it's out of control. I mean, it isn't hardly any good news anymore. Everything's just out of control, it seems like. Everybody's fighting each other, and both political parties hate each other, and they can't get along, and same way in the state government. It's just a lot different.
What about changes in the community? What are the biggest changes you've seen in the community?
Well, like I said, it went from the boom when it was just getting out of that when I was a kid. After the mill, we had a hotel in town and everything, and And then it was what's going on. Then we got the turkey plant. Then there was some employment for people. And then that closed. And that really hurt the town. And what's happening now is we're getting more people building houses and stuff in town. They don't want to live in the big towns. And like they don't even, a lot of people don't even want to go to build in Detroit Lakes because they think the smaller school's better, and I think it is. So the town is starting to come back now some, but we had some tough years in town.
Do you have any advice for people nowadays?
Don't spend so much money in getting whole. You see so many people. I feel sorry for people now. They got to have a house. They got to have 2 cars, and then of course, then most of them will buy a snowmobile and a fish house and all that stuff, and they get so far in debt and they can't make it. I think people got it tougher now than we did back when things were tough, because nobody had anything back there, and nobody expected anything, and they just went on with life, and as long as you had something to eat and a place to sleep, that's about all you really cared for. Nobody had anything, so nobody was really jealous with anybody, and people got along more. They went to houses and played cards and stuff like that. It was, the community was, now people just on the run all the time. Run.
Is there a word of wisdom you'd like to share?
Just live a good life and don't be selfish, because there's a lot of people that need help nowadays.
Essentia Health, our presenting sponsor, is proud to bring you Words of Wisdom. And TV3 and LB Video Productions.